You are listening to the Super Freak Media Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, please be sure to show your support and follow us on our other social media platforms. Check out the links listed in the description of this episode to find out more. Thank you.
As Peter Vincent's leaving, he checks his mirror, sees that this guy has no reflection. He's like, me. I'm out of here. I'm gone. Hops in his car. Like any self-respecting gay man, he sees the drama and says, I'm either going to do one of two things. I'm going to get heavily involved,
Yes.
or I'm just going to cart it and leave. Welcome to the They're Queer podcast, episode 1, where two homos called Liam will look at all things to do with horror. We'll be discussing the 1985 film Fright Night, as directed by Tom Holland. Tom Holland, not to be confused with the twink who plays Spider-Man, although I would very much like him to bite into my neck.
Oh, wow.
I think we need like a spicy counter on this podcast for just how spicy things are going to get.
Well, if my notes are anything to go by, it might have to come with a content warning a bit later. Good God.
Is this bitch for real?
I included photos in my notes, and I was like, who's that for? Because this is an audio podcast. And I realised that's just for me.
Yeah. Just doing that key research that you need to do. You definitely need to look at everything.
I do. I need to make sure that some videos don't play during this as well, and I'll explain why later. Anyway, hi Liam.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very warm. We're filming this on a day when we've had an unexpected heat wave.
It's literally so unbelievably hot. Like, I mean, for the people listening at home, just to let you know, this is our second go at starting this podcast because my laptop's just overheated. So you best believe that we're just two hot puddles of people at the moment just trying to make this podcast for you. So
I did not sign up for this.
Wait a minute, how do you not know what you're signing up for? You already did this, girl.
I mean, just right, that's the end of the podcast. Just get out, Liam. We've made a grave error.
No, but I do want to get my teeth into the first episode.
This is you're killing me.
As we were saying, we'll be discussing the 1985 film Fright Night. Not the remake with Colin Farrell, but there are notes on that too.
Daddy, chill.
Anyway, enough of the smut. We can save that for later. I have watched this film many, many times, but this happens to be this week. I've watched it more times than I could possibly count, as well as I've done some extracurricular research. And by that I mean
just biting random people.
Yeah, I've been biting people.
Liam is now a vampire.
Yeah, I went out, I found a vampire. I was like, just drain me. It turns out, what's a vampire? I was just on Grindr, and yeah.
I mean, that's a horror story in itself, that app, but yeah, we'll get into that.
That later. I decided to read the comics as well, of which there are a few.
Are the comics prequels or sequels?
Sequel.
To the original 85?
To the original, yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't mention the second film.
Oh, does it not?
No.
Okay, interesting. How did you first find out about Fright Night? How did you get into it?
So, my mum doesn't like horror films at all, but she's got an obsession with The Lost Boys. It's like her two favourite films have the word boys in the title.
And
It's The Lost Boys and Boys in the Hood. They're my mum's two favourite films.
Vastly different films.
Yeah. But we, when I was about 7 or 8, I walked downstairs and she was watching The Lost Boys. Mm-hmm. And she was like, you can't watch this isn't for kids. And I was like, I don't care, I want to watch it. I can see vampires. So I watched it. And then, because I really liked it, my mum was like, oh, we should watch Fright Night next. So we went to Blockbuster, where my nana worked at the time, and we
keeping it in the family.
Fright Night. Yeah, and that's where I discovered it, and I fell in love. I'd say it was a gay awakening, but that happened many years prior.
Why are you gay?
But it definitely awakens something.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny that you mentioned Lost Boys, because I do feel like in some way, obviously, they were both responsible for kind of shooting some new energy into the arm of like vampire movies in the 80s, weren't they? But I feel like they do go together quite well. And I think it is because they do have those layers.
And sexy vampires.
And sexy vampires, yeah. I think as well, I always kind of forget, with Fright Night and Lost Boys, it's funny that you said that you were like told, I can't watch this, it's not a kid's film. You kind of forget how gory and gross these films are.
Yeah. Upon rewatching it must have been a couple of years since I watched it last. I'd even go far as say it might have been even a decade since I last watched it, until watching it for this. And I was really shocked. I was like, oh, okay, this goes harder than I ever thought it did.
Yeah, it's weird because I completely forgot one, how great some of the practical effects are, but like two, as you said, like how intense some of those sequences are. Like, I mean, in places it's absolutely harrowing to watch.
Yeah, I forgot about the boobs as well. I forgot you see some boobs in it. I was completely
just all the boobs in that film. I've got an interesting bit of trivia about that.
About the boobs?
About some boobs. But okay. I'll get into that. But for the people at home who haven't seen Fright Night, do you want to tell us a bit about what the story is and the general gist of this tale?
Of course. So we're in a sleepy little suburban town in America, which I just need to say, first and foremost, I don't know any town that has architecture that looks like this. For start.
Yep.
I can't imagine just walking down the road and being like, oh, there's a nice little 3-bedroom detached house.
Yeah.
And next door is this lovely Gothic mansion. But anyway, yeah. Let's go into the synopsis, because I can talk about the architecture in that as well.
No, I completely agree. It's I think that's the point, isn't it? It's supposed to be kind of like, okay, that's the house that every kid in this neighborhood is terrified of.
I want to be that person, though. Do you know when you were a kid and you walk past the house and you'd always be like, oh, a witch lives there. That's the house
You want to be the witch.
I want to be the witch, and I want kids to avoid me. Even better.
I'm not going to lie, I do feel like that is quite the aspiration.
So, to give a brief synopsis of this film, we're in a sleepy little suburban town in America where Charlie Brewster lives with his incredible mother.
Yep.
Next door moves in a mysterious stranger. Charlie's quite transfixed by this stranger and his living servant? Houseboy?
Yep. Handyman.
Yeah, so our main character, Charlie, is very suspicious, thinks things aren't quite right, says this to his best mate, Evil Ed, and his missus, who's just... I've watched this about 20 times and I can't remember her name because she's that boring.
Do you think? Okay, interesting. We'll get into that. Amy is her name. Amy Peterson.
Oh, well, moving on. Turns out, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, the next door neighbour's only a bloody vampire.
Oh, he's only gone and done
only
it.
a bloody vampire. Yeah. He's only gone and done a naughty thing and killed some women. So Charlie's like, oh no, tells everyone who will hear him. No one believes him. Side note, Charlie's a big horror nerd like myself.
Yeah.
Watches an Elvira-esque show with Peter Vincent. Basically, long story short, he goes to talk to Peter. His mates convince Peter to come and chat to Jerry and be like, oi, come and set him on the right path. He's obviously full of shit. Peter Vincent's like, yeah, show me the money. They show him the money. He turns up, does some tests. He's like, oh, he's not a vampire. Charlie, you're an idiot. Charlie's like, oh, okay. But then, as Peter Vincent's leaving, he checks his mirror, sees that this guy has no reflection. He's like, me. I'm out of here. I'm gone. Hops in his car. Like any self-respecting gay man, he sees the drama and says, I'm either going to do one of two things. I'm going to get heavily involved,
Yes.
or I'm just going to cart it and leave. At first, he carts it and leaves, which is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But then, like a dickhead, he gets involved because, as any messy gay will tell you, where there's drama, we have to get involved. So, of course, he comes in, he just does what you think. He just does it all wrong, basically.
Yeah.
He's just like, I think I'm bigger and harder than you because I was in a couple of films that were a bit shy.
Absolutely.
And then, I'm really selling this to you. And
you're doing well. I want to watch it.
Oh, good. Well, it all cracks off. Sexy vampire Jerry confronts Charlie and Amy in a club. He kidnaps Amy. He's like, come on then, Charlie. If you think you're big enough, come over. Come and rescue your girlfriend. If you're that interested in her, you come over into the house. Or if you're that interested in me, you come over.
Yeah, I think it's the latter, to be honest.
I'll go into my monologue about Jerry soon.
Okay.
2 hours later.
Basically, Charlie goes over. Bing, bang, bong. Big fight. His best mate, by the way, has been turned into a vampire. He carks it. Or does he?
Yeah. Plot twist.
Yeah. And then they all confront each other. They end up killing Jerry.
No! God, please, no! No!
It's very sad. The world's lost a sexy vampire. In the end, it's like, oh, we're all okay now. Peter Vincent's got his show back. By the way, Peter Vincent lost his show, but that's neither here nor there. Charlie and his missus are on the bed. They're about to do the nasty. And then Charlie gets distracted by the house again because he sees two glowing red orbs. And that's Fright Night.
Welcome to Fright Night. For real.
I think it's a very, very good film. Very, very good film.
I forgot how much I loved it. I forgot how much I appreciated it as like a younger person watching it.
Yeah.
Like I really, because it was horror, but it wasn't like horrifying.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but as I've grown up, I've like really started to appreciate it a lot more. And there's like cues that I was like, hang on. This isn't just straight up. Straight up.
This isn't straight up anything. No,
this isn't
absolutely.
straight. This is not straight.
I mean, I think I personally, I came to see this film a bit like later in life. Like I think I was in college when I first checked this out. So I'd have been like 16, 17. And I think it's one of those weird films that I think you could quite easily watch it and not see the queerness in it. And you could just watch it and it just be a story of this lad who's trying to get laid and he gets distracted by a vampire next door, offs the vampire, and then it finishes with him hopefully getting laid. But I don't know, as the years have gone on, and I think, as I've kind of watched it a lot more, and particularly now from the perspective I have, like, of watching it, it's kind of like, God, how did I miss this? It's like when you watch the I don't know, the Pixar films back or like kids films of the 80s and they're just full of like sex jokes and you just completely missed them when you were a kid and you're wondering like why your mum and dad are like having a whale of a time next to you.
I think one of the reasons why you'd be confused as to why this film isn't gay at all is because Charlie dresses like absolute shit.
Nerve. She had the nerve to wear those ugly ass shoes. I give that to her.
We don't have a stylish protagonist at all.
Good God, those ugly, heavy tweed blazers.
Yeah,
like ill-fitting chinos and a shit shirt. I look at someone like I'll go into this soon, but Charlie's mum's a gay icon.
Yeah, straight up.
Charlie's mum's a gay. No way would she let her child dress like that.
No,
there's no way anyone would let that. I mean, what kid walks around? What kid who's in high school would walk around looking like an impotent accountant?
I'm an accountant.
Not just an
That's
accountant.
That's not going to get you laid, Charlie.
An impotent accountant. The thing is, though, I think the reason it stands out so much, though, is the fact that the rest of the cast have such, like, they almost have too much style. Like, especially Jerry. I mean, Jerry is just everything. It's like a time capsule of the 80s, but he does stick out as just being just terrible.
He's boring.
Yeah.
Like, if he was, at least he's pretty. I'll give him that. At least he's pretty.
I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, but like rewatching it recently, kind of thought he came off as a bit of a dick. Like,
oh, absolutely.
I mean, he's not the most likable. Like, I'm not saying like Evil Ed is obviously intentionally, I'd say, annoying his best friend, but
yeah.
He's a bit of a dick. Like, the stuff that he puts Amy through, poor thing. Like, she's
absolutely.
literally,
I mean,
getting naked.
I think that's quite. I like it when they put a protagonist with flaws. Like, I really enjoy it, but I feel like the real villain of the movie is Charlie Brewster.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those weird films where you kind of don't want the bad guy to get defeated,
no.
I mean, yeah, you kind of leave the film like, oh, okay, well, good prevailed again. Hey ho. I don't know. When you first watched it, then obviously everyone's journey is different, like in how they kind of perceive things and identify. And you were kind of saying that you pretty much always come at it, I think, from a bit of a queer perspective. But did you always think it was quite gay?
I never thought the film was gay as a kid. But that's because, like, I don't know why that is. I think it's just because I just didn't see it with that lens. But
yeah,
I did think from a young age that I'm being serious when I say this, that Jerry was absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, sexy, beautiful, everything. And I always thought that Peter Vincent was gay. Always.
Oh, God,
even as a kid.
Yeah.
I was like, that's
fabulous.
Homosexual now.
He is fabulous in every way.
I have this, like, fan fiction in my head.
Okay.
Of Peter Vincent and Elvira.
Yeah.
Being mates. They exist in the same universe.
I can see it.
They're mates.
Yeah.
They go out every weekend on the lash together. Elvira tries to get him laid.
Yeah. I feel like he's the sort of person who would just never get laid, though. Like, ever.
No.
Or he'd be the opposite. He'd be like the one you don't expect.
Oh,
he'd be an absolute beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just pulls a book on his bookshelf.
Like beds that you pull down. There's beds that are like stuff you walk pull down, but he pulls it down and it is a sex and there's all like huge double those on the walls.
My God.
But they're all horror themed. Yeah.
I'm laughing at how much I'm going to have to beep out of this. But I don't know, talking about stakes, I always interpreted, especially that character, as being gay. Yeah, Peter Vincent is played by Roddy McDowall, who was, I believe he was openly gay anyway. I think obviously he came from a time where it maybe wasn't the coolest to be a gay man in Hollywood.
He was never
Was he not
He
open?
never explicitly say that he was gay, but it was well known in Hollywood that he was, and he had a fling with Rock Hudson.
Oh.
So, everyone at home, I'm sorry that you can't see this, but I found a lovely photo of Roddy McDowall and Tab Hunter. So, back in his day, Roddy McDowall was...
he wasn't bad, was he? He was not bad at all. I mean, I was watching the. I'll give a shout out to this documentary. So, anyone listening, if you like Fright Night, there's a great documentary and book called "You're So Cool, Brewster: The Story of Fright Night" by Gary Smart and Neil Morris, produced by Dead Mouse Productions. And I actually picked their stuff up at a horror convention. I think it was Birmingham Horror Convention a couple of years back. And I don't know, there's like a 3.5 hour documentary about Fright Night 1 and 2, which is ace. And the director, Tom Holland, said that he knew Roddy McDowall used to throw like these soirees, like these parties, and I think on one day of the week he'd have his straight party, and then on a Friday he'd throw his like gay bash, and that's when he'd get together with like all his queer friends.
Get me in a time machine.
But yeah, it sounds incredible because Tom Holland said that he actually found himself at one of these parties, and Vincent Price was there, who was initially actually supposed to play the role, but I think due to ill health he wasn't able to.
Well, that's where
it.
The name comes from.
Yes, yeah. I mean, he's the perfect amalgamation and kind of parody, isn't he, of Peter Cushing and Vincent Price?
Yeah.
They couldn't have done it better, quite honestly.
I could not imagine anyone else in the role. I'm really glad that in the remake they changed.
It was very different. Yeah.
Changed the characterization.
Yeah.
It was still very good. It was for a different audience, but I'm glad that because I don't think that performance could be topped.
No.
Peter Vincent probably could be topped.
Peter Vincent probably has been topped quite a few times, but
many times. Many times.
I think I think it would be interesting. I don't think they've ever kind of said that it was written, the character or the film, as like explicitly queer, but I mean there were decisions that were made creatively that could only, if you really look at it, be taken kind of one way.
I agree. I think some of it comes from I mean, there's like a really throwaway line in it when Mrs. Brewster's looking out of the window.
Yeah.
And she sees the new guy's moved in next door, Jerry.
You seen the new guy next door yet?
No, but I did hear he's got a live-in carpenter. My luck, he's probably gay.
No, I don't think so.
She's not saying it in a bad way. Well, she is.
No.
She's being like, oh, just my luck. A hunky man moves into the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
He's probably gay.
Disappointed.
There's also then no reaction to that. There's no. There's none of that. And that.
For the time, that would have been incredible.
Very minor to a lot of people listening to now, but in the 80s, to hear that with no comeback to it, no biting reaction to that is a huge thing. I still was, when I was watching it, I was like, oh, me. I've never noticed that before.
Yeah,
but yeah, and that's one of the many reasons why I love Mrs. Brewster.
Yeah, I mean, she completely steals the show. She's not in many of the... she's not in much of the film, is she, really? She is obviously like a sub-character. And I think they tried to beef up the part when they did the remake. And obviously we had Toni Collette in that role. But I think I did forget just how funny she actually was in the original. And like you said, it would seem throwaway, but for that was progression, right? Like right there.
Theory.
Okay.
I have a theory. Her gaydar was going off like crazy, but it was just in the wrong direction. She was looking at the neighbours and a gaydar was going off, but it was actually coming from the twink stood next to her. It was like a twinky, ugly dressed son coming in. And
I don't know.
You know that Mrs. Brewster, the minute she thought they were gay, she wanted to go out on the lash with them because not long after this scene, she offers her son a Valium. That's bed. Parenthood, right there.
Go to bed, go to sleep, and let mummy go out.
But she offers him a Valium, and I'm like, I want to party with Mrs. Brewster so bad. As soon as she thought she had gay neighbours, in her head, she was like, right, we're going to go see a drag show, then we're going to go to a bar, we're going to get turned, and then we're going to plan going to circuit parties together.
That's it. She's living the dream. She's having a whale of a time. I mean, that's probably why she doesn't hear the absolute racket that Jerry makes when he enters the house later. But we'll get onto that. But one thing, still touching upon that, which I find quite interesting, and I mean, again, I don't think I'd seen this done before, was the fact that I don't know, Jerry had obviously moved in with his live-in handyman Billy, but the idea of them being a gay couple was almost like the disguise to cover the fact that obviously he was a vampire, because it would perfectly explain why a man of that age didn't have a wife and kids, why he was living like with a guy. And I don't know, particularly obviously the time, we've got to give it context. It would have been a time when gay was kind of like considered to be like this evil thing, wasn't it? Like AIDS was rife. It was kind of getting into all of that time, but I suppose that would kind of be a perfect disguise, because it means people wouldn't ask questions. They wouldn't want to know.
In 1985, when the whole AIDS epidemic blew up, because that was the year that Rock Hudson died.
Yeah,
and it was well documented that he died of complications with HIV/AIDS, and so that was. It's quite a year. It's quite a year in our history.
It's absolutely awful. I mean, one of the lines I noticed, you're going to kind of later on when just before Evil Ed kind of gets converted, Charlie makes a comment about the fact that a vampire wouldn't want him.
What do we do?
Let him go. No vampire's gonna want him anyway. Probably give him blood poison.
I always saw Ed as a gay character as well, and I think there is this the relationship between Peter Vincent and Evil Ed is a key one to the story, and it very much comes full circle. So I think
Ed says with Ed, he calls everyone a fruitcake.
He does. He does.
He calls Charlie a fruitcake quite a lot. But there's a line that he does say to Charlie at one point.
Amy!
She finally find out what you really like.
Buzz off, evil.
I think Charlie and Ed have experimented when they were younger. Maybe Ed's just not got over it, or maybe Charlie hasn't processed how he feels about it, because I don't know. Amy is like he kind of starts it off.
To be fair though, Amy is the girl. If you were going to pick a beard, Amy would be Amy would be the girl you choose to be your beard.
I thought Amy was lovely, like a really nice character, and I don't know. I thought she was pretty hot.
No. I think she was quite plain looking until she gets the vampire makeover, and she gets a new set of weave.
We do need to talk about.
She looks
this.
fantastic there.
Where does all this extra hair come from?
So I have a theory. So this goes into my. Sorry for bringing Twilight up, everyone, but Twilight, they're all. The reason why Bella goes from looking plain to beautiful is because it's explained in the book that they're supposed to be that beautiful that they attract their prey. You know, like birds have beautiful things to mate with people and stuff.
Yeah,
and certain flowers, like Venus flytraps, will look gorgeous until they snap them up to attract their prey. The same goes for vampires. They're that beautiful because they need to lure in their prey.
I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense, actually.
But Ed never gets the glow up.
He just looks worse.
Yeah.
In every way. I mean, he does kind of get a glow up with the Raggedy Ann wig. He's serving a look when...
that scene. That scene is fantastic. I forgot all about that scene. And when it happened, I was like, do you know when Roxy Andrews does the wig reveal in Drag Race? And Michelle reacts to her, like waving her finger and snapping. That was me with Evil Ed and his Raggedy Ann wig.
Work.
I was throwing pound coins at my TV screen, tipping him.
I mean, the thing is it just does not make sense at all. And the fact that Peter Vincent walks in and still thinks it's Charlie's mum.
Yeah, this is what women look like.
He shows he literally knows so little about women's bedrooms. I think we've just made a discovery right there.
All women go to bed in a woolen wig.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Going into this, rewatching it again, I knew I kind of had to keep my eye out for the gay stuff. So was there anything that you noticed in particular that maybe you hadn't seen earlier, or I don't know, anything that you kind of missed in the last few years when you'd watched it?
Yes and no.
Was it gayer than you remember, or was it just about the same?
So there's little, like, I've paid more attention to the dialogue.
Yes,
I've already
for sure.
said a few things about that. There's I feel like Mrs. Brewster, bringing her up again, knows that
the icon, the legend,
a fruitcake. Because when Amy and Charlie come down, she's like, "Oh, thanks for helping Charlie with his homework." And I feel like Mrs. Brewster's the type of mum who'd be like, "Were you safe? Did you use anything?" She knows nothing happened up there. She knows that her son was going to wimp out in the end, or 100%. Something was going to happen. And the way she says it's quite tongue-in-cheek, and it can be read as, "Oh, I know what you're doing, not doing your homework." But I see it the different way. I now see it as, thanks for helping him with his homework. Because that's all you're ever going to do.
When I first watched it, I never really thought of Charlie as a gay protagonist. And I don't think it's obviously really hammered home. But it is hard to kind of keep ignoring the amount of times he shuts Amy down.
Do you want to make love or not?
Amy couldn't really be doing any more, because he is. I personally think he's punching, like, especially like you said, when she gets the vampire up at the end.
Amy could have been stood there with her actually in his mouth, and he'd still find a way of being like, Oh no!
He literally does. The film opens with him like making out with her, and then his eyes just go to two men taking a large package inside the house, and he's gone. And then she's like struck down.
In the film, I was also looking at Jerry's large package too. So,
Oh my God!
I mean, just kind of slightly going off tangent, but I was reading an article earlier, like about the queerness in Fright Night, and it was an article by, I believe, a lesbian identifying cis female, and she was saying that film kind of halted her coming out because she had this idea of what men should be because of Jerry in this film. And even though she was attracted to women, she was like, oh no, I can't be a lesbian because I like Jerry so much. So I think he throws up a lot of confusion for a lot of people. He's extremely charming. So I see where the attraction lies.
Well, there's a scene. Well, I'm just right. I'm sorry. I know we were stopping on a tangent, but I just need a Jerry moment. I just need to talk about Jerry for a moment. Every time Jerry comes on screen, there's this like soft porn music playing with this guitar playing in every scene that he appears in, and it like I was just like, that music was made for that man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But it's like proper like. The first note I've got on here is I would let Jerry do unspeakable things to me. There's a scene where it pans on Jerry's arse. Do you know in the club scene when he's like seducing Amy?
Yeah.
She puts her hands on his arse, but the camera lingers on it for a bit too long. And I would personally like to thank Tom Holland from the bottom of my heart for that.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Tom Holland, for that, because you didn't, and whoever edited that as well, you could have just cut away, but you just lingered, just that right amount of time for me to sit there and question my relationship, my identity, my everything.
I think that's what I'm saying. Like, there's got to have been a point where they reached some decisions where they were like, because I mean, I don't know, with vampires in general, the whole mythos and everything, and we mentioned Lost Boys, but even like the classic old vampire films, they always had this air of sexuality about them, didn't they? Like, vampires could very easily be like avatars for queer people in terms of seducing prey, and no matter what the gender or whatever, it was acceptable because it was the food chain, as opposed to it being like, I don't know, romance or something. So I don't know. I mean, again, referring back to the documentary, Tom Holland like literally said, the scene where Jerry's hand gets penetrated by Charlie with the pencil. With the pencil. When he kind of transports himself back to his house and he rings Charlie, Billy is literally knelt down on his knees in front of Jerry. Like, I mean, the angle as well that Charlie sees it from, it just looks like he's
oh my God, he says that line to Charlie though.
I just destroyed your card, Charlie. But that's nothing compared to what I'm going to do to you tomorrow night.
Good God.
But that's it. It's like, me watching that, like, probably before I became comfortable with like who I am, I would have just seen that and just been like, oh, he's just talking about the fact he's going to rip his throat out. But now he's like, no, he's talking about other things that he's going to do. It's a lot.
I was thinking, I think I actually, like the first time, like not the first time when I was a kid, but first time going back in as an adult, I had to pause after that line. I was like, good God.
He needs some milk!
Had to cool yourself down.
Yeah. Again, with Jerry, and I keep going back to Jerry and the dialogue that he uses, but he says to Ed at some point when just before he turns Ed and he's stalking him in that alleyway, he's like, I know what it's like being different.
You don't have to be afraid of me. I know what it's like being different. Only they won't pick on you anymore. Or beat you up. I'll see to that. All you have to do is take my hand. Here, Edward. Take my hand.
That scene is, I mean, that's usually, that's the sort of scene that you would have been used to seeing, like, I don't know, Dracula with, like, Mina, or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you'd expect...
And the way that he takes him into his coat as well is so seductive.
It's so tender, it's so, like, vulnerable, and I mean, I don't think... At any point, it was very clear he wasn't doing that because he had to. He wasn't hunting. He wasn't. Plus, also, I feel like that's the first in this one, not the remake, but obviously this is the first person we've kind of seen Jerry turn as well, and I think that speaks volumes. As well as the fact that I think he chooses very actively to not kill Charlie because he has so many opportunities. He loves toying with him.
Does.
Absolutely.
So this my longest note that I made was Jerry's whole role in this film.
Whole role.
Anyway, but the whole purpose of Jerry's being in this film is to make Charlie accept who he is.
Yeah.
He's like that older gay mentor who's giving him tough love because he could have killed him at any point.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like when he turns Amy, it's not to be like, oh, I'm taking her, so you've got to come over and I can kill you. It's like, you don't look at you. You don't need her. You don't need Amy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
His whole thing is, everything he's doing is to try and get Charlie to accept who he is. And...
I think it's funny you say that because I also thought that it worked in some ways for him trying to get Peter Vincent to kind of maybe acknowledge who he is as well, because I mean it's very obvious. Obviously, we've said he's this gay man who's clearly playing straight in Hollywood, and I mean that's pretty much hammered home right from the start in the fact that he has this phallic steak and he has it the wrong way. The point is like facing his it is pointing to his face and his mouth, and he like goes off screen. But I mean, even Evil Ed, who we can read as a gay character, confronts him and says he used to admire him, and he found out. Until obviously he found out how fake he was. And I mean, I don't think that's him saying you're not a real vampire killer. I think that's him saying, like, I thought you were this openly, like, gay man, but you're not. You're just hiding.
Yeah.
To the point where it's... I mean, you know, when Peter Vincent actually then gets to Jerry's house, Billy is there and, like, Jerry kind of drapes himself over him, and I mean I think that's probably the gayest moment between the two,
where he's just like cuddling Billy, where Jerry's cuddling Billy from behind.
I mean, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing, but to the point where Peter literally runs out of the house as opposed to like facing that this might be what happens between two men. Peter definitely goes on this journey, and I think he then comes to terms with who he is after he's penetrated Ed, and he kind of comes back to the house and he's ready to do battle. You could very easily see that Jerry's playing with Charlie. And I mean, the apple, the forbidden fruit, the temptation, all of these things, it's very clear.
Always eating fruit.
It's constantly eating fruit.
There's your message there. There's the game.
It's because he's fruity.
One of my favourite scenes is like the most heartbreaking scene is where Peter Vincent's just killed, staked Evil Ed, and they could have easily have like cut that so it's a lot shorter than it is, because it goes on for a while and it's so heartbreaking, and that tear that falls in his eye, and
absolutely,
oh god.
I mean, I don't know, it was very much of, we'd seen like at that time we would have seen like The Howling and American Werewolf in London, and we'd had all these transformation scenes, but I think it does stand out to me because obviously it's a reverse transformation in a lot of ways. It's because it has this human element to it. Like it's I don't think he didn't want to kill him necessarily. It was kill or be killed, but at the same time it doesn't make it any less heartbreaking.
Well, what really got me was like, if you think about the time when this was filmed, the gay population was being ravaged and wiped out by a disease that was transforming their body and withering people away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of older gay people were just seeing all the young, well, it wasn't just the young, but you know what I mean? It was like they were seeing this disease wipe out this younger population.
Yeah.
And they were watching people die slowly and cruelly left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
And watching it this time around, like never thinking of it in that context before.
Yeah.
Oh my God, my heart broke. Absolutely broke.
I mean, it takes on a completely new, I don't know, meaning, reading, whatever you want to call it, when you look at it that way, because it is literally, we're watching like this person who should have had his whole life ahead of him just wither, and like that would have unfortunately been the experience for a lot of queer people at that time. So, I mean, looking at the film, I think it's not only the story and some of the journeys that these characters go on that makes it undeniably queer in my eyes. I think also we've got to take into account that there's a good portion of the cast were also part of the LGBTQIA plus community. So, did you know much about that, or was that something? Because I kind of found it out as I was doing research for this. I didn't know that off the bat.
I didn't know. I knew Roddy McDowall. I knew of Roddy McDowall, but the one that got me was Evil Ed.
Yes, Stephen Jeffries, I believe. His name,
Sam Ritter.
Or we'll get into that.
But I didn't know. I had no idea that he was a homosexual in real life. Knowing that and then watching it with that as well was great. It was a really good way of watching it with a different perspective.
Absolutely.
The reason why we say Sam Ritter is because Stephen Jeffries went on to have quite a successful career in the porn industry.
Yes.
So that's where some of my extracurricular research went to. I watched a few scenes. There was a scene that was set in a boarding school.
God, you have done your research.
So to give a brief synopsis of that and to go scene by scene.
Can you imagine? This is the part of the podcast where we give a play-by-play of one of our favourite porn films.
One thing, just to briefly touch on the remake. I don't want to go on about it too much because it's not something I think it can be enjoyed as a separate entity, but I don't really feel like it's not Fright Night to me. But there's a lot of it seemed like it was intentionally made with every line being like "no homo" in front of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they completely dropped it in the remake. I mean, there's obviously whiffs of sexuality that come through. Is whiffs the right word? I'm just thinking about David Tennant and those trousers, to be honest. But
yes, so am I.
I don't know. I think there's almost an understated sexual kind of presence in some ways with Jerry in the original. Like he is this sexy character, but he's not Colin Farrell having to wear a tight t-shirt doing physical labor in the front yard. I mean, it helps, but do you know what I mean? He's sexy in a very different way. Still, I will say Chris Sarandon, who plays Jerry, obviously he features in the remake as well, and still would. But just rounding up the queer cast, Amanda Beers, who also played Amy, is a lesbian in real life.
Really?
So yeah, pretty much the essential key players of the cast that you look at. I mean, basically all of Charlie's aides are part of the LGBTQIA plus community in real life, which I think is interesting.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And now I want to rewatch it knowing that Amy's the person who plays Amy is a lesbian. Now I want to rewatch it again. Right? Should we cancel this recording? I'll watch it again, and we'll
just watch it for the 21st time, and then we'll get back together. I don't know, obviously, again, if it was something that she was open or comfortable with at the time, but it's certainly obviously something that people know now. I don't know. Watching the film, I personally thought that she did an amazing job, because I do think she went from this drippy character to this sexual beast, obviously, by the end. And the funny bit of information that I wanted to say, not only did her hair get longer, they also made fake breasts for her for that finale. So when she has that white dress on, and she looks absolutely stunning before she turns into a great white shark. She has and apparently she hung on to them for quite some time as well. So,
I as well.
She was basically a drag queen in that finale. The makeup was amplified, the hair got longer, and the tits were just huge.
Well, you saying that, I want to know, how would you make this film gayer?
I think,
apart from the obvious, you know. I can't sleep with you, I'm gay. So, for me, there's some subtle things they could have done.
Okay.
So, when we first see Jerry seducing that lady with her boobies out, you see these fingernails get really long. And now imagine if they were like a fresh set of acrylics.
Just Cardi B style nails.
Yeah.
Coronavirus!
Imagine if you were like these long, red, fresh set of acrylics with like a little diamante in each one. As I said, quite subtle things.
Quite subtle.
Or, I feel like Billy,
yeah,
Jerry's housemaid, should have been wearing like a little French maid's outfit throughout the whole film, with no explanation why. Yeah. But also, should have been speaking in a bad French accent.
Definitely.
I think, yeah. And as I said, subtle things like that would have just ramped this up a little bit more. Another thing I want to quickly talk about is Jerry's house.
Okay. How fabulous it is.
Only someone at the Limp Wrist Brigade would be able to turn a boring suburban home into a gothic pleasure palace. No self-respecting hetero would create a dramatic staircase with a giant stained glass window at the top of it.
Yeah,
that's how I'd make it gayer. Jerry would give us a house tour. Another couple of things that I'd make it gayer with. Sorry, I've got a lot of ideas.
No, you go for it, girl.
The club scene, I'd have had... The music was a bit camp, but I'd have ramped it up. But I'd have also wanted a full-on Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion dance sequence in that moment.
This might be a queer travesty, but I've still not seen Romeo and Michelle.
That's
end of the podcast.
I spent the whole of my life thinking that the Rocky Horror Picture Show is my favourite film in the world. It is actually Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion.
That's overtaken it. It's that impactful. Yeah. Okay, I need to check this out. But dance routines all the same. I can get on board with that.
My final thing that I'd make this film gayer, going back on the scene where Peter Vincent goes in Mrs. Brewster's room and sees, Evil Ed in the bed with the wig on. But imagine if it was a full-on, Wigs by Vanity wig.
Yes.
Lace front. And then Evil Ed gets up and just does wig reveal after wig reveal after wig reveal.
Yeah, bitch. Work.
All while he's like...
I love that.
His fingers, and he just shimmies out of bed, and he's got the long nightgown on, and then reveals this. That to me
could work.
We don't want to hammer it in your face that we're gay, but
I feel like the animal that he transfigures into could have been something like hella gay. I'm trying to think of a gay animal. I don't know. Instead of a wolf emerging to attack Peter Vincent, I feel like it could have been a peacock or something. That just came out of the bedroom. I don't know how else I'd make. I mean, it's pretty gay.
Mrs. Brewster could have had a bigger role as well.
I mean, I feel like there is. Briefly mentioning, obviously, I think Fright Night Part 2 we need to do its own episode, because
it does need to be its own separate entity,
because it's again just an incredible film of the time and the characters, everything. But we did lose some key players from Fright Night, Amy, Charlie's mum. These were people that I think we should have got back. Well, talking about gay things, I don't know if you've prepared any or what, but I know that there was a section of this podcast that we wanted to do about drag queen entrances, drag race entrances rather, into the workroom. So did you have any for any of the characters or any?
So I'd quite if Jerry was on Drag Race and entered the workroom, I feel like he'd be obviously holding some fruit. Yeah, he'd take a bite into it, and it'd be something along the lines of, "This is not the only fruit I'm going to destroy. Take a bite into it, chuck it at the girls.
One of the things I was going to say, as a possible Drag Race entrance was it was just going to be Jerry just saying, "I've come to suck your then into." That could work.
Mrs. Brewster comes in. She hasn't even got a catchphrase, but she's there and she's offering everyone a Valium.
Props to you, Mama.
Yeah, a Valium and a Bloody Mary. That's a way I'd make it gayer. When we see Jerry drinking his Bloody Mary, I'd make it like just the gayest cocktail. Like there would be every colour in there. There'd be a little parasol. There'd be everything.
I feel like Peter Vincent would have been a really good Drag Race guest judge.
Yeah.
I
He'd
think
be a
that'd been
bitch.
really good. If they'd
He'd
have done
be
like
so shady. He'd be awful.
Absolutely. Constantly.
The shoes were wrong. he wouldn't say anything positive. He'd either just stay quiet if he liked it, or he'd just be saying the worst things ever. And he'd constantly be checking himself in his mirror as well, which is just a key thing that he does.
Oh my god, when he opens his little compact mirror, it's really like Carly Kloss when she was like looking camp right in the eye. Like Carly Kloss levels of camp. And fantastic. That's how I would rate Carly Kloss levels of camp is how I'd rate this film, I think.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, it's even if you don't look at it and think it's hella queer, I think you've got to just the campness is there, which I personally live for.
On the basis of Fright Night, I'd quite like to recommend to anyone out there, if you really enjoy Fright Night, there is a fantastic book that really reminds me of Fright Night, just in terms of it's about somebody has a mysterious next door neighbor move in. Turns out they're a vampire. Spoiler alert for the book, but it's kind of like it's kind of like in the title. But it's called The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I read it the other month, and now I've just finished Fright Night. I kind of want to reread it again. Yep. It's fantastic. It's kind of like Steel Magnolias meets Fright Night meets Dracula.
Okay. Sounds interesting.
It's quite good. It's quite camp. It's really, really good. It touches on some like hard-hitting themes as well. Like it touched a lot on racial inequality, but it's fantastic. So if you really enjoyed Fright Night, which if you've got any taste, you did.
If you
recommend reading
if you've
the
got
book.
this far in the
Also,
podcast, you've probably enjoyed Fright Night.
Also, if you did enjoy Fright Night, I'd definitely recommend reading the sequel comics. Particularly, there's a great scene. Spoiler alert, Evil Ed comes back as the main villain in it. And there's a scene where there's like a newspaper article about Peter Vincent, and it's like, horror host found in gay club of younger man. It's like,
wow.
It's fantastic. And Evil Ed's like pissing himself laughing at the time of this news article.
Well, sounds awesome. I definitely want to check out more of like this story, because I feel like the canon of the original Fright Night like kind of film, I feel like there's a lot more to it than what we got in that first film, and I feel like they went in a very different direction with the sequel than I think I would have liked them to, maybe in some ways. But
I agree.
We'll get into that. But yeah, Grady Hendrix. I've got My Best Friend's Exorcism. Is it? I still, as of yet, have to read it. But
it's a fantastic book.
I know. I think the Final Girl Support Club or Support Group has just been picked up by
the Final Girl Support Group. Is another one, like the most recent novel. I've literally just downloaded that onto my Kindle, so I'm going to be reading that next.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to check that out, because I mean, it just sounds like it's just right up my street. But I don't know. This part of the podcast, we said that we'd always try and like recommend some queer media of some sort. I've got kind of two things. One isn't necessarily horror, but it's something that I really enjoyed. I just watched this week, which is fresh to Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Q-Force.
The animated thing.
Yeah, so I mean, not horror in the slightest. I mean, there is like one episode which I think throws a direct nod to American Werewolf in London, with kind of like this zombie guy coming back. But I don't know. I absolutely loved it. It kind of reminded me of like when I was younger and I used to watch like Ben 10 and Fairly Odd Parents, like that kind of vibe. But it's very much, you've got kind of all these stereotypes of the queer community, but it's done in a way that I think is really, really well done. I really enjoyed it.
Has it got like a queer cast?
Yeah, I mean, I believe so, but at the same time, you've got the likes of Wanda Sykes is in it. David Harbour voices one of the characters, which, I mean, for someone who
yes! I'm watching it.
I mean...
Yes, Daddy!
Yeah, it's really, really good. It was good fun. So I definitely advise checking that out. But looking at maybe something that is maybe more definitively queer and horror, every year I always like to revisit Kim Petras' album Turn Off the Light. She kind of added to it, I think, the second year. But it's got some tracks in there featuring Elvira.
Yes.
Big fan of hers. Anyway, win.
Nice to listen to that each Halloween rather than like Thriller and the Monster Mash. And
yes. Well, actually, I mean, I'll probably be posting it on the Super Freak Media socials anyway, but I have already put together a playlist on Spotify called Queer Fear. Yeah, it's a really cool playlist. So I don't know, I might pop a link in the description of this episode, but it'll be definitely pushed out like closer to Halloween. Another part of the podcast that I think when we were looking into like what we could do as little sections and stuff, I think we looked at maybe some true horror stories of the gay community. So I believe you have a Grindr horror story that you found from Twitter. Is that right?
I did.
Dim the lights, everyone. I think shit's about to get real.
So this is by user Kevin Damash, who goes on to explain that I met up with a random Grindr guy at his house. He had dolls in glass cases all over the house.
Was this Trixie Mattel?
Including his bedroom. After leading me to the bedroom, he spent 30 minutes making a playlist for us to have sex to.
Oh no, I've just said I made a playlist.
The best part of the sex. I ejaculated to Mbop by Hanson. I am obsessed with the idea of Grindr or her, you know, lesbian apps included, any sort of hookup app. I'm obsessed with the idea of people's hookup horror stories. So if you do have any hookup horror stories, please contact us on social media. Let us know. And we can keep them anonymous. We can keep them anonymous. Or we can, you know, blast out who you are all over social media. But I would really like people to send us their hookup horror stories. They're some of my favourite things in the world to read. So please send them in. I've found quite a good thread on Twitter now, so I'm going to go through it. Might even also start including some of my own that have happened in the past.
Oh, okay.
Recently listening, they don't happen anymore, I promise.
I was going to say, yeah, you're a taken man. This is past tense. Everything told will be past tense. It's a minefield out there, guys, so there's definitely a lot of horror stories to tell, I'm sure.
There are. They are some of my favourite stories. If I'm around a group of queer people, it'll always come back to hookup horror stories.
It's never like normal stuff, though. It's never. Nope. It's like there's always something that just sits outside the realm of possibility. Do you know what I mean?
Ejaculating to Mbop by Hanson.
Yeah, I mean that being the weirdest part of the story. After we found out that this guy had a room full of dolls in glass cases. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
It was going, I was like, oh god, he got the dolls involved, but no, it just turned out to be worse.
Yeah,
it was just. Mbop.
I'm never going to be able to listen to that song again.
So thank you for listening. We really hope you enjoyed the first episode. It's been really fun. This is only a taste of things to come. I feel like some sort of joke I could have put in there, but I feel like I've been quite.
I feel like this.
Snotty,
the filth level has been quite high on this episode. To say this is episode 1, we've got to go easy.
I can't wait to delve into more, especially for next month. So next month, with it being, you know, official spooky month and Halloween, there's only one of two films we could cover for Halloween.
Yeah.
And we went for the campest one.
Yeah.
Sister!
Oh, look, another glorious podcast. Makes me sick. Yeah, so we're not going to talk about Hocus Pocus. We're talking about Halloween. Can you imagine? Rug pull.
Next month, we will be talking about one of the greatest movies of all time. We will be talking about Hocus Pocus. I will talk in depth about Sarah Jessica Parker's costume.
Just Sarah Jessica Parker's.
Yeah, because anyway, I'm not going to explain why. You'll have to tune in next week.
Next month. This is monthly, guys, not weekly.
But what you can do while you're hanging out is to find us on social media and stalk us that way.
That was flawless. That was beautiful to watch.
So, on that note, I would really love you to join us next month. And remember, the only thing that should be hiding in a closet is a monster or a babysitter killer. So, thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.
You've been listening to a podcast on the Super Freak Media Podcast Network. To show your support, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And you can find us on social media in the links in the description of this episode. Thank you for listening.